and welcome to CDO's magazine series of one-on-one interviews with CDOs, data leaders, and key influencers. I'm your host, Robert Lutton, Vice President, Sandhill Consultants, coming to you today from Toronto, Canada. On behalf of the CDO magazine, I have the pleasure of introducing another Canadian, Pascal Tyrrell, who is the Director of Data Science at the University of Toronto. Welcome, Pascal.
Thank you for having me, Robert. It's a pleasure being here.
You know, there's a definitely cart before the horse scenario, right? That many organizations are still struggling to overcome data quality issues. Something that you might have seen in your own background. How have you overcome it, and what suggestions would you have for organizations that sort of want to get there but realize that they've got this big hurdle of quality data, and how do they generate or improve their data to be able to leverage it for data analytics? Thoughts?
So that's a tough one. So definitely garbage in, garbage out, right? So
Yeah.
nothing that has not changed, and I don't see that changing anytime
Damn,
soon.
I thought you might have
Yeah,
had some miracle cure for that, right? But
Whoops. Yeah. Unfortunately not. But
okay,
what we do have are better tools, right?
right.
So there are certainly better tools for curating your data or just going through it and cleaning it up. Which years ago I used to give talks on data management and stuff like that, and
Right.
it was I used to say about 80% of the task of any job is
Yeah,
cleaning the data, right? And everyone
exactly.
used to laugh, and but that hasn't changed.
That still has
So
not changed. It's still the bulk
it's still
of the.
there. It's still like 80% of the project.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
only thing is now it's definitely more manageable in the sense that you have some fantastic tools, and definitely artificial intelligence and machine learning is definitely helping in this respect, that you have these automated tools that can go through and look through your data and capture, look for errors and whatnot. So that's fantastic. I think that the challenge is learning to embrace it. So it's a process, and I think as long as it's part of your process and you don't ignore it, or you don't try and put it to the side or forget about it, then you're okay. And embrace it. It really means that it's bringing it into your process, accepting that as part of your process, and then not forgetting about it, because very often people will find some new funky process and just trust it. That's fantastic for the rest of but data changes, right? And so that's the tricky bit, is keeping on top of those very subtle changes that are occurring, and especially in artificial intelligence and machine learning. That's actually a big issue with our data, is that we need to keep track of that, because these little changes over time slowly erode your accuracy or your performance, if you wish. And if you don't keep that in mind, that's a big problem, right? So if you put together this wonderful classifier, for disease, yes, no, over time, because things are changing, the machines, like these MR machines or CT machines, change, and all that, then eventually your classifier, its performance is going to erode, and it's a problem. In business, it will be the same thing, right?
Sure.
So depending on how you're capturing your data, it can change, right? Biases creep in or whatnot, and so you do need to keep track of it. And so that's when I say embrace it. So meaning that make sure it's part of your process, that you're continually checking and making sure it's appropriate, right? That what
Yeah,
you're
and I was going to mention that there, biasism does kick in, or conditions change, external or internal conditions could change. So, a nice response, Pascal, is to organization to make sure that it's not a repeatable pattern that you can just crank out time and time again. You've got to give it attention. Now, when we look at skill sets or talent, right? Which I don't care what industry you're in, right? There's not enough talent out there for data analysts, data scientists, and things like that. So it's very difficult for organizations to try and find the right resource who can turn these insights into actionable value and become more data driven. Have you run into this issue? Have you figured out any ways that you can solve it? Do you do any kind of internal training? You're at the University of Toronto. Perhaps you support some of their classes. What insights could you do that other people listening to this may be able to look at and address?
Yep. I'm once again easy for me because this is something I'm asked to talk about all the time.
Sure.
So the reason I say that is because as an educator, inevitably I do get to see all of the different aspects of what's needed, right?
Right.
And I'm also a CEO, so I do
Right.
understand that as well. But I'll tell you the one word is collaboration. That so really that's what you need to remember. And that's because data science is made up of three pillars, right? You have the math stats, which is the one pillar. You have the computer science and engineering, which is the second pillar. There's no order to this, but I'm just giving
Yeah.
them in this order. And the third one is content experts. So for in business, it would be the business analysts or the
Right.
business people that understand the business and the data, right? Those three make up data science. You can't have data science without the three. Doesn't matter who tells you what.
Right.
If someone's going to say, I'm all three, I'm an expert at all three, there might be a few people on the planet, but there's not really going to be that many
Right.
truly that are
Right.
expert in all three,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, whenever people are saying, "Oh, what resources do I need? How do I build my team? How do I get this done?" The more you can build a collaborative team where different people have different expertise in those three pillars, the more successful you're going to be. The other problem, of course, is bias, right? So if you have one person that's doing
Right.
everything,
Yeah.
well, they're not going to be able to objectively ask themselves, "Am I doing it the right way?"
Of course,
You know,
he or she is doing it the right way. Of course. Why would I
yeah,
need to consult with anyone? Yeah, I
well, that's
know.
the yeah, exactly. I don't even have to
Yeah.
ask. So it is best to have a little bit of a team. You can have, of
Right.
course, a lead data scientist, of course, but under the part of the team has to be a nice little group of collaborative people that do take interest in all three pillars. That's the other piece that's tricky is you know you'd think many people think that it's math stats or it's computer scientists that
Right.
become data scientists most often, but a lot of when data science became a thing and over the last, let's say, 10, 12, 15 years, the biggest transition was actually from business. It was actually from content to experts, and that's
Right.
actually, in my opinion, um, probably a good thing and probably the best thing. And the reason for that, and I say that as a CEO. So, if I need a programmer, if I need, an AI or machine learner or a programmer or whatever, for me to hire a programmer is I hire a programmer,
Right.
whatever, right?
Right.
If I need a statistician, I hire a statistician. There's lots of them out there. Some people who truly understand the data from a content perspective, hard to get because
Is,
that's where the money is,
is
right?
that
So,
people who understand the business? Is that what you're saying? People
yep,
understand the
yep,
business,
yep.
understand the data, right? So I just want to make sure I elaborate
Yeah,
that
not
out.
at
So
all.
for people
Sure.
that are
So,
they're looking at that, it's the people who understand the business that because you can teach them or you can partner them with resources that know the math and the
yeah.
science, right? So
Correct. So exactly. So I mean, inevitably, if as I said, if you let's say you brought three people together
right,
for a team, right, and you have one math and one computer and
right,
one business. So inevitably, everybody's going to try and understand what the other people are doing. Ideally, if they work as silos, then that's not collaboration and it doesn't work. But if they work collaboratively, then it's going to work. So to find and I do this all the time. Like I train these students, right? So I
right,
get brilliant students from math and stats that I train in data science, and teaching them how to understand the data and that end of it is difficult, right? Computer scientists, same thing, and engineers, same thing. The problem is getting them to understand the data. Why are they applying it? How are they applying it? What are the outcomes? Why, what's the impact? That's hard for them. Taking content experts and then training them in understanding computers, how they work, understanding the math and the stats is the same thing. It's difficult, right? But what I'm trying to say is those, the people that truly understand data is really, really important. I don't want to try and say one's more important than the others,
right. It's a
but I'm gonna
three-legged stool. It's a
it is a
three-legged stool,
three-legged
right?
stool, but
You can't have one with the other. Yeah,
you can't exactly. But I am gonna say what's harder to find
right.
are the content experts that have an interest in computers and data.
And
That's
can
hard.
communicate that interest. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Tell me,
yeah.
just as I digress, just you
Mhm,
talk
mhm.
about you actually teach your students in your role as CEO, you actually end up teaching them. Do
Mm.
you do this as a private entity or as part of your particular role as the director of science? Or, and
I,
the reason why I'm asking this question is there something I can point to our listeners that they can say, hey, you too can register for Pascal's course at the University of Toronto? How do you handle that?
so I do both. So inevitably, my lab at the university is a research lab, and then my computer and my contacts in industry.
Yeah,
There's a lot of overlap, and it's on purpose because I'm part of innovation and I enjoy that. So I do both. So meaning that my graduate students, my undergraduate students, people that work in my lab come to me to learn data science, and I also
right.
teach, statistics and artificial intelligence and machine learning. Those are the two courses I teach. So that's what I do at the university, and then inevitably in my companies, what happens there is I have interns, right? So then I kind of do the same thing, but I'm welcoming an intern from various universities. It doesn't have to be University of Toronto, and they work with me at the in the company, and so inevitably it's pretty much very similar
Osmosis.
in
Yeah,
terms of
yeah,
what
yeah,
I'm teaching, but
yeah.
it's either mentorship or in a formal class. In terms of, that's a very good question, actually, when you ask, is there something that you can point to? And institutions are just now in the process of really truly putting together data science programs, graduate level degrees for data science. Definitely in the United States, they're a lot more ahead of us. There's
Right.
definitely universities that have it. In Canada, it's a little slower to come, but it's just starting. So there are a few programs for sure at most universities in Canada, but it's just kind of coming together. So to point to something in specifically, no, sadly, I can't. There isn't really anything in
Well,
particular. You can look
when
at my
you,
website if you want, but
Pascal, when you do have it, please come back to the CDU magazine, and we can obviously advertise it to all our leaders. Just
sure.
make sure it's remote, right? So that we are
Okay.
on demand learning, right? So let me just,
Perfect.
yeah, because I need it myself, right? No, I just want to make sure that there's a path, right? Because again, it is here for a while, right? This is the next
Mhm.
evolution, right? So Pascal, thank you. Thank you very much indeed for your time today. You've been very gracious. We really appreciate it. I certainly hope that we'll get a chance to come back and talk maybe about your own business, the success of that, how that's going. But
Sure.
also, more important, I hope that we'll get a chance to come back and talk about what's happening at the University of Toronto, the future of machine learning, artificial intelligence, AI, and of course, data analytics, which you know so well. So thank you for your time, Pascal.
My pleasure.